Howdy, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Okayest Trapper podcast. We are brought to you by Mountain Tough Fitness. If you are looking to get in shape for the upcoming trapping season, use the promo code OKS30 to get a free 30-day trial and try out their newest programming utilizing only a weight vest. I started this very morning, and I can attest the difficulty of the under 30-minute workouts. I was sweating, I was in pain, I was cussing them out, but it was all for the better, so go give it a whirl. When you get a chance. But on today's episode, I am joined by an amazing human being. He's a hunter, a trapper, and the owner of Trapline Beard Oil Company. He's personally found himself spending more and more time out on his lines as he's watched the decline of trapping nationwide. And he even started a nuisance control company to help with critters in his hometown of North Dakota, or home state, rather, of North Dakota. Bryan Watson, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you as well, man. I mean, I've wanted to do this for a little while. We've gone back and forth and, different scheduling conflicts, but I'm glad we're able to do it. But to kick it off, one of the questions I always ask people is, what is your earliest core memory of ever being exposed to trapping?
I would have to say I was probably like 7 or 8. My cousins used to run muskrats up at our cabin up in northern Michigan. And that was kind of when I kind of got the bug. And, they always said, you're too young to go out with us. Cousins didn't really want me around. So, but that was one of the things that I always wanted to get out on the line with them, and so it's always been something that I've enjoyed. I stepped away from it for quite a long time, went more into hunting and stuff with my dad and when he was alive. But, and then I just got to where, I don't see the trappers like I used to, and it's just, as it's declining with a lot of younger people. So I thought, hey, why not get involved and see about getting, doing stuff with kids and things like that and try to get them involved. So.
Well, that's awesome. So you're starting to do stuff with kids. But before we jump off of that, I'm curious, so you were in, did you say, was it Northern
Michigan?
Northern Michigan. Is that where you grew up?
Yep. Well, I grew up in the Flint area.
Okay, so you're not drinking any Flint, Michigan water now, though?
No, it was fine back then, I think.
Good. But so your cousins were trapping muskrats, and you like to tag along every once in a while.
Yeah.
How long was it before you had your own line or were out doing it? Did it take a while before?
Yeah, it took a while, just, years, because, I got into bow hunting and things like that. My dad was a big deer hunter. So, I don't think even trapping was huge in Michigan where I was at, so it took a while to get into it. And so I spent a lot more time, in the woods hunting, deer, squirrel, rabbits, you name it.
So, and what you mentioned a bow too, were you mostly a bow hunter, or did it kind of run the gamut between rifle, bow, or whatever you could get your hands on?
Pretty much whatever season I could hunt. And, I started out gun hunting. And then as I grew a bit, got into my teenage years, my dad got me a bow and I started bow hunting and never did get deer because I can't sit still long enough. Not bow hunting. So gun hunting, but I like to walk. And that was another reason I wanted to get more into trapping because, you don't have to just sit there all day.
Yeah, no, I get that too. Like that's where I started as well, was particularly bow hunting, but back east sitting in tree stands and, sitting on your rump for 8+ hours a day in the season. That is a true, people who say tree stand hunting is easy. They don't understand the mental struggles of sitting in a tree for that long, waiting for some quarry to maybe never walk by. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
But you were hunting, you were going around. At what point, I know you're in North Dakota now, what was kind of the life trajectory for Bryan that kind of brought you back to trapping?
Like I said, it was more like just not seeing people doing it, and you see a lot of bad people talking bad about it and things like that, and it's just like, so I just said, I'm just going to get back into it and start doing it again, try to spread it around.
How old were you when that epiphany happened?
Probably in my 20s, I hadn't between being a youngster and then that age, deer hunting, rabbit hunting were just the thing I wanted to do. But then I just thought, getting back into this would it's just a different lifestyle.
Well, I'm curious because I'm going to go out on a whim and say that when you were hearing kind of like the bad things about trapping, starting to see the negativity surrounding it by outsiders, like I'm imagining in your 20s, the social media presence wasn't as high.
No.
So where were you hearing like these kind of negative things? Was it billboards, coffee shops? Like,
yeah, pretty much like that, and kids you grew up with and things like that, and we didn't have Facebook, it was a great time for that kind of stuff back then. But, my cousins, knowing that they had been trappers, and they would talk about what people would say. And, and it's just.
So in that late period, though, like where you had kind of stepped away and focused on hunting, had your cousins continued and like stuck with trapping throughout that?
Yeah, somewhat, I separated away from them, they kind of grew up into their high school years and later, and they started doing their own thing, so. And I started getting with my friends and doing stuff, grabbing the bird dog and going bird hunting or whatever.
So when you did decide, you heard stuff around it, like what did it take for you to kind of get back out there? Like, was it a matter of going to, a trap supply store, getting some more traps? Did you have some laying around? And were you in North Dakota at this time? And
no, it was still Michigan. I've only been in North Dakota for like 3 years.
Okay.
So, it was kind of like a buying everything new.
Yep.
Getting back and learning again, stuff that you forget. And just because if it's out of your mind, it's just not something that you remember as well.
Learning all over again. So like, were you targeting muskrats specifically? Did you look at coons? Like what was the core?
Raccoons were fun because, I did a lot of coon hunting. So, it's kind of a progression, from coon hunting to trapping coons. And I think they're kind of fun they're fun to trap, and they're not that hard to trap. It's a great way to get into it.
And what's the draw on? I mean, obviously the coon skins are great, and they obviously help with clearing out the critters who are taking out ground nesting birds. But like, what's the population of raccoons look like where you were at, and how many were you starting to get? Like, what kind of line were you running at the time?
Nothing huge, I just have like maybe a dozen traps out for it. It's just I've always done so many other things that I couldn't run long lines, like some of my good friends now, these guys, that's all they do. And I'm like, man, I got like 5 other jobs. I can't be out there that long. So even now I don't run long lines, I just kind of have stuff here and there, on some places that people need me to remove stuff,
Yeah. And that's awesome. Do you remember when you started back trapping in your 20s, what the first critter is that you caught and like what that experience was like?
Probably, one of the first ones back was probably a coyote, and just the excitement of, setting a trap again and having them jump on that trap that first night, even when you go out and set, it's just like, hey, I'm the greatest trapper in the world, man. I got this guy on day one, and that feeling just kind of gets to you, and it's just like, and then you go out the next couple nights and it's like the next couple days and it's like, oh man, that was a great morning, one trap, but where'd they go?
and then the reality sets back in, right? You feel it. And that's why my podcast is named The Okayest Trapper. Yeah. You have the high highs and way too many low lows of being out on the line, but that's awesome. And was it a foothold, a snare? What were you running over there?
Foothold. I've never done snares. I actually bought some to do this year because we get so much snow up here. And it's so cold, just digging out trap beds when it's, 45 below. I'm not interested in doing that anymore. So I'm going to start snaring. We can't snare till like mid-November, late November. So.
Well, yeah, you and me both. I have a bevy of snares I've gotten from some folks like Mark Ross and other guys ready to roll. But I'm like you. I've never been much of a snareman, even though we have crazy amounts of snow in the winter. I've just never had much luck. So I kind of gave up on it early. But this is going to be the year that I rebust out the wire and kind of hopefully figure that out a little bit. But
yeah, that's kind of what I want to do this year. And I really want to kind of concentrate too on muskrat and beaver. But our muskrat don't start till like October 26th. So, and then before you know it, we got so much ice and it's thick. And it's like, man, I don't know if I want to chip out ice to get a couple muskrats out of there, or their house is buried in 4 foot of snow.
Yeah. It's we have a similar, very short window. I think our season doesn't even start till November 15th for both beaver, muskrat, and otter, and it runs through March. But it's that finite window where you have like 2 or 3 weeks where it's like doable. And then you got a pickaxe or a jackhammer or something out there just to bust through the ice to even make a single set. And that's another level of dedication that you got to be prepared for.
Yeah, because last year after season open, it was like maybe a week later, I went out and sat on some runs in a pond that I knew of that had a ton, and I had to chip them out in the morning, and it's just like 2 weeks after opening day of muskrat season. I'm like, I had to chip my traps out to get the muskrats out of them.
Yeah. And speaking of that, like when you were in your 20s, what were the fur prices like at the time? Was it still around the fur boom, or was it all
Yeah. I never trapped for selling my furs. I just do it because I enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll handle nuisance things, and I just like to get out and do it. I've never cared to sell stuff. I don't do it for money.
I don't think many of us do.
No, true. I never did it for money.
Yeah.
We'll put it that way. Back even when furs were worth something.
Yeah. Do you ever do anything with the furs for the most part?
No, I'll like give them to people if somebody wants them. I mean, I'll tan them myself the best I can. I'm not a tanner, but I just, there's so many like raccoons around here, and we have a great pheasant population and turkey population here in North Dakota. So, I want to keep that going. So I'll get after them, the raccoons for that. And, muskrats I do, and I just keep the furs for myself because I think they're cool.
Yeah, they are
Beavers the same way.
Yeah, they're pretty cool little things, especially when you put in the effort to, especially beaver, when you're actually fleshing them and getting them strung up and tailing up. They make some pretty cool little pelts to be able to use for a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah, I just took 2 out for a guy because we don't have a close season on beaver.
Mm-hmm.
He was having some nuisance problems with them, eating his trees up. So he asked me to come and get rid of them. And he's on a river. I took out 2, and I was like, well, that's all I'm going to take for now. If you're still seeing them around your house, let me know. And I skinned the one out just because I wanted it. And the other one I took to our local zoo. Our zoo said they'll take it to feed their bears. So,
really? That's cool.
Yeah. So I'm like, all the beaver I get this year, I'm just going to take up there and say, you guys want another beaver for your bear? They just feed them the grizzlies.
Well, first and foremost, I use most of we eat the beaver that we have for the most part in the winter, but like summer beaver, if I'm doing a control job too, those get saved for like bait barrels for bear. And I just had one stolen out from under my porch the other night, out of a locked cooler. And, I never thought about taking it to a zoo if I wasn't up there. That's actually a really kind of cool.
Yeah. I had asked them, I'm like, I just happened to stop in there when I was running back by with it. I had it in the back of my truck. So I had to park like a ways from where they walk into the zoo so people didn't look in the back of my truck. And I went and asked the lady, and she goes, well, let me give you the number to the head lady here at the zoo. So I called her, and she was all excited. She's like, man, that'd be awesome. So I said, well, I'm not going to skin it out for you guys to feed your bears. So you can do it yourself or whatever. You just want to feed it that way. So I just gave it to her.
That's pretty cool. I'm sure that bear is probably pretty happy. He's like, man, I didn't get a natural treat like this in a long time. So
yeah,
I'm sure that bear was happy too.
Yeah, probably. We got like 3 grizzlies, so they'll feed them to that.
Hey, well, that's a pretty cool way to get it, of use out of it, especially for like a summer control job. But
yeah, I mean, that's what it was for. I was just helping the guy out. So,
and then, as you were getting back into trapping, you're running these lines, you're obviously doing a whole bunch of different things, but, what's the appeal, for like, I know you're not running super long lines. You're like me, you're running short lines, but, you said this is something that we need to preserve. Like, what is it? Is it like the nostalgia? Is it the feeling of being out there? The act of like preserving something historical? Like,
I think the whole thing. I think everything you said. I mean, this country was built on it, as every trapper will say. To me, it's so cool to just go out and get something to step on a little spot. However big your trap is, whatever you're trapping. Get that one little critter to get in that one little spot. It's just an amazing feeling, I think. I mean, with the gun hunter, you got a huge spot of an animal you can shoot. And a lot of times you're baiting or whatever. I don't know what states, certain states you can't bait now, but um, it's a lot different of being able to figure out how to get that thing to step right in that spot. Which I've been fighting with a fox right now that he won't get in that. He won't step on it for the life of him.
Yeah.
It's driving me nuts.
Yeah, I in my book I wrote about it. That was the first critter I ever tried to trap was a red fox, and there were several outside of my place, and similar, would root up my what I thought were well bedded traps, pull out my pan covers, pee on my traps, flip my traps over, and it went on for months before I was able to finally connect. So I can empathize with the pain you're feeling.
I mean, he walks right up. I got my trail cam on it. He'll walk right up and like look at it from like a foot away from it, and then just I'm just gonna keep going.
Yeah,
sucker, well, stop.
It'll happen eventually. It'll connect, that's for sure. But yeah, with that love for nostalgia, though, like as you were getting back into it, can you remember what the biggest mistake you made on any of your trap lines has been to date?
Pretty much just thinking something, you think you know what you're doing, and then the next thing you look like a fool because you're not getting them to step on your trap.
Yeah. So what's the solution? What's the solution for that? Is that just like trying new things? Like, if you think you know something and it's not working.
Yeah, that's what I'll do. I mean, I'll try anything new, maybe it'll work. Maybe that animal will be dumb enough to cover for my stupidity,
Yeah. That's what I'm always banking on too, but it usually doesn't always work out. They usually seem to be a lot smarter than me in most instances.
Yeah. That, or make like everybody else says, your trap's not bedded well. I think I've lost 2 or 3 at least recently, just because I was in a hurry and it wasn't set good, and it might have wiggled just as they were getting ready to step, so they dug it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a piece of advice as old as time in the trapping community. Is like, make sure your traps are well bedded. No matter what. And I'm guilty of that too. You do get in a hurry if you do even string together 3, 4 traps, man, you want to get out of there eventually, and it's getting dark and you're like, all right, time to move on. But then you always pay for that little bit of laziness when it comes into it. So similar question, but from like a fur shed. Like, I know you're not keeping all your pelts, but like in that initial phase of like learning to flesh animals and to skin animals, like, do you remember the biggest mistake you made there, or a piece of advice maybe?
Take your time, I guess, more than anything, because I mean, I do them and I'll get holes in them all the time because I'm like in a hurry. Mm-hmm. I'm not a professional. I'm constantly doing something, and all of a sudden I get a big hole and I'm like, crap.
Yep.
Well, this fur will look nice hanging in my fur shed. Yep. Mount it to the wall.
Yep. Yeah, I think you and I are kindred spirits there as well. It's easy. Well, it's ironic, right? Like, you can take your time. And if you've heard of the idea of like flow state, like where you're doing something really meditative, I find fleshing and skinning to be that. But sometimes you almost get too much into a groove. And like you said, you'll be like taking long strokes on a fleshing beam. And then all of a sudden you're like thinking about the pot roast upstairs, or your beard oil company, and all of a sudden you just look down and, like you said, there's a big old hole looking up at you, and you're like, well, crap.
Yeah. Then I find something to donate it to, maybe somebody. I've got some, I'm going to send some of that beaver fur to a guy that makes flies. He wants to make some fishing flies. He's never used beaver fur. So he asked me if he could have some, and I was like, sure, I'll send you some. So,
yeah. Well, that's a hat tip to, like, the idea of like all of these animals, like, even if, people talk all the time, right? You need to be able to, quote, respect the animal, which I agree with, but mistakes happen, right? Like when you're learning. So like, I know I talk a lot on this podcast for people who are interested in getting into trapping and want to skin animals and want to be able to do things with the fur. But I talk to a lot of folks who are like, I'm scared because I don't want to, quote, disrespect the animal by putting a hole in the fur or whatever. But at the end of the day, like, my opinion is you have to learn. Yeah. But you bring up a great point. Like, even if you make a mistake, like, all is not lost. Like, that fur could have sentimental value to you. It can hang in your fur shed, whatever. But people tying flies, or people who want the down fur of a beaver for hats, or, just scrap fur for teaching kids about trapping, all those different things you could leverage the animal for. Or if it's a total loss because it sat out or your freezer killed out, you can take it to the bear at your local zoo. I found out.
Yeah.
So,
They'll like it.
There's always something to do with it, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But, Bryan, like one of my favorite things about doing this show is getting to talk not just to trappers, but to entrepreneurs. And that is exactly what you are too. You've already mentioned it. You've always got your hands in a bunch of different fires.
Yeah.
But, what was the Nexus story for Trapline beard oil? I mean, that is about as niche as you can get. I mean, obviously the Lush beard is a pretty good indicator.
Yeah.
But how did that start, and how has that been going?
I used to let my beard grow a little bit, not like this. It would get dry and stuff and itch, and I'd get dandruff, on my shirt and stuff. And I was just like, man, this is nasty. I got to figure out why. And so I was like looking it up and say beard oil. I'm like, all right, let me go to Walmart and see what they got. I didn't care. And I started using some. And I'm like, this is okay. So I was like, why don't I figure out how to make my own? So I did some research, and about starting a company doing it. And well, wait, we'll get to that later. So I started making my own, and my wife's like, man, this stuff's really good and smells really good. You should try selling it. So I was like, all right.
Were you using castor?
Well, nah, we're actually working on that. Me and Bryan Flowers. I don't know if you know Bryan Flowers.
Yeah.
Him and I, we actually have one right now with Muscaro.
Okay.
But we are going to do a beaver castor one.
That's pretty cool. I was almost being tongue in cheek, but I could see the appeal. But anyway, so I didn't want to derail you too badly, but I had to say it.
It is going to be. I'm going to have some that way coming out not too long. Well, I'll sell it through his website though. But yeah, I was just making it for myself, and my wife said try to sell it. And I was like, so I did. I got a buddy here that he's kind of my test dummy. I use, I guess, down in the town south of us, and he was like, this is cool. Can you make balm? I'm like, I don't know. Let's find out. So I started looking, and so I started adding balm to it, and everybody loved it. I'm like, I use only natural stuff, all natural oils. So I did that. And then the next person's like, hey, can you make a wash or something like that? So for your beard, I'm like, yeah, sure. Let's see if I can do that. So I figured something out and added that. And then, it's constantly something new being added to it. Somebody says, hey, can you make this? Cause I could really use that. So like my beard wash, I make a body wash, for men and women. It's all handmade stuff and all natural. So it just kind of kept growing from there. I mean, is it huge yet? No. But I got a lot of people using it. And if the business never takes off and be huge, I'm still going to do it because, people like it.
Well, I can't think of a better niche to find men with beards, right? You think about like the quintessential mountain man. Like, I had a beard as long as yours for a long time too, and then I went back to the mustache. But there's always stuff you need. Like I need it from a mustache too. But you picked a great place.
Well, I looked at it and I'm like, there's a ton of these businesses out there. I'm like, who can I market to? And I'm like, what? I love the outdoors. Trappers. Why not? So I'm like, I'm going to pick trappers. I'm not going to sell to just trappers, but they are my first and foremost is what I did it for.
And I could see like the parlay, if you will, into just other outdoor enthusiasts. You think about like the smells, and everything else that goes into it. Like we were joking about beaver castor, but that was the core base for perfumes for ever. And, thinking about that tie back to history, I think that's actually pretty cool where, even if you are not a trapper, right? I think that A, cool logo, and B, like, just Trapline beard oil, I think it could appeal to way more people. So I think you made a really wise decision in that. And
well, I have a deer hunting scent that I haven't pushed it huge yet, but it's actually my oils with pressed acorn oil. And it actually smells like the woods. And I've had 3 or 4 people put it on their trail cams last fall. The deer just loved it. They come right up to it. And I'm like, so if you can't bait where you're
put it in your beard.
Put it in your beard. You're baiting. That breeze is going to blow that acorn scent. And the animals seem to love it. It's been pretty cool. So
that is awesome. So what's the experimentation like? So you obviously never had a background in beard oil making or soap making. So, are you sitting in there like with a lab coat on in your basement? Like, what's the process look to figure this stuff out?
No, I started looking online to see what goes into a good beard oil. What kind of oils is best for the skin or for the hairs. And so I just kind of started doing that. And I kind of come up with what I thought was a good one. If you look at most companies, they have like 5 or 6 different oils in there, and you don't need that. And they do that, and they can charge way more money.
Yeah.
So I use 2 oils in mine. And I keep my prices low, even though one of those oils I use is $100 a gallon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I still keep my prices low because I want everybody to be able to afford it. I'm not trying to get rich. I'm definitely never going to get rich doing this business, but because I don't sell it for enough. They told me, I did some research, and they said to start selling at a 600% profit and margin. Wow. And I'm like, yeah, it ain't going to happen. I wonder why they charge $35 for an ounce of that stuff. I'm like, I ain't going to do it.
Well, that's good. I mean, ethics are a good thing to have in business that are far and few between, but do tie back again to the idea of trappers who, in reality, have always followed a code of ethics, right? Yeah. Whether that's just respecting the animals, doing the right thing. So I think that's admirable. And, for knuckle draggers like myself, and I mean, I'm going to throw trappers under the bus here. Most of the ones I've met, they're not necessarily, metropolitan types, right? So what's your pitch for the trappers to say, you should probably use a beard oil?
Yeah. I just get out and talk to them. I'm like, most of them are like, I've never used anything. And I said, well, you know what? I said, this can make your beard smell good. Your wife is going to like that. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
I said, instead of your beard stinking, with whatever food you got left in there,
or whatever lure accidentally like dipped in it as you were setting your traps.
Yeah. Or the food that you leaned over and ate and you got in the bottom of it. That's pretty much how I get after the older guys. I mean, the newer guys, younger, I'll say, they've been using it, they know about it, so it's they've been using it for, thousands of years, but the older generation just doesn't know about it.
Yeah. And I know you've been to some of the different conferences and rendezvous, like you said, what's been kind of the response? Like when you do get somebody, you say, hey, just buy this, go give it a whirl. Are you getting people coming back and being like, oh yeah, the old lady was a little impressed with that. It's much better than, cut up bobcat glands.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty much how it works. And a lot of times I'll just give somebody some, just say, hey, take this and try it. If you like it, great, come buy some more. If not, give it to somebody else.
Yeah. Well, and your entrepreneurship doesn't end at the end of your beard either. I know you've started your own, ADC business, helping out with critters around, your hometown there now in North Dakota. What prompted that too? Is that just going back to the kind of the ADD nature of having a lot of different things to do and keeping it close to home with trapping?
Yeah, pretty much, and I really kind of started to try to get more people to get rid of some of these pigeons in town. I live in the town of Minot because once you leave up here, there's like nobody. If you leave town, everything's wide open. So I kind of like saw pigeons as a problem. There's just billions of them. I'm like, there's some money sitting right there. I'll be driving by with my wife and go, look, man, there's like $500 worth right there on that road.
How much do you get per pigeon?
I'm about $20 a piece, probably.
And is that I'm just curious here, like, is that because it's an introduced species and there's essentially like a bounty? Like, how does that operate? Because I always hear about pigeon problems, but I don't know enough. Like, maybe educate me a little bit on like the history of why there's so many damn pigeons there, and then the why we need to get rid of them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, why, I don't know. Why there's that many. They just keep breeding and nobody does anything with them. And if you don't have a lot of owls or hawks, chances are they're going to be a bunch around. But when they go to the bathroom, they rot a roof. There's so much disease in them. People they just think, well, I got these on our roof, of our business, and that we just got to deal with it. But It's a disgusting. They'll ruin a flat roof pretty quick.
Really?
Especially if there's a lot, you know. It
Is
just
that like
eats away at
the acidity in
Yeah.
their fecal matter?
Yeah, it just eats away at stuff, you know.
Wow.
And so I just walk into businesses and say, hey, you know, it's not been. I only started it 3 months, 4 months ago, and people are. It's like you go in and you just kind of poke them in the ear with it, you know. Say, hey, here's my card. You guys should really get rid of some of these. You know, you don't have to get rid of them all if you don't want to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did it for pigeons. That we have a lot of gopher problem here in town. I haven't been able to get my foot in the door with much gophers yet, just because the guy that's friends with me is a pest control guy. He sends work my way that he doesn't like. He doesn't like to deal with wildlife. I'm trying to get him to give up some of that, because there's a lot of them suckers in this town, and there's holes everywhere, you know.
Yeah. Golf courses, home is everywhere.
All of our
right?
parks, you know, they're just loaded. So, you know, I'll help out with squirrels. I'll help out with, you know, any raccoon problems. I haven't had anybody calling raccoons yet. I've been keeping geese away. Unfortunately, it was a high school. I wanted to shoot them all, but they wouldn't, you know, being so close to a school, they kind of frown upon you taking a gun onto the school property now.
Yep.
And a lot of houses around. So I've had to use coyote decoys and moving them around a lot. But that kind of work is what's been going so far.
Well, that's pretty cool. I mean, like you said, it keeps you in the outdoors too. It keeps you from rotting away, which is as good a thing as you can ask for. So, you know, with that, like with kind of your career trajectory, like in the trapping world on a bunch of different fronts, you know, again, one of the things that I like to talk about on this show is getting new trappers involved. Like for somebody who's looking to get into trapping, what would you suggest to them? And then maybe to add on to that, I know you mentioned doing some of the youth stuff to try to foster some activity around our next generation. Maybe talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah. I mean, join your organization for one, you know, NTA or, you know, fur bearers, or, you know, your state, of course, get into your state. I get into surrounding states, but take a trapper's class. I mean, they're free. Almost every state does them for free. We're going to be doing one in Indiana. Nope, Kentucky. Bryan Flowers and I are going to do one in November, working with some kids down there. Take care of some bobcat problems at the same time, but, you know, teach kids. We're going to have like a whole weekend of it, you know, hanging out, take the kids trapping, and teach them how to set, how to, you know, dispatch and skin them out, everything, you know, the whole process. So
that's pretty cool. And then, like, you know, for me, I think it's easier for kids, right? I mean, like my kids too, like they get excited about it. They're really into it. But for an adult who's thinking about getting into trapping, what's the biggest piece of advice you would give them to kind of get over, like, aside from joining the association, aside from taking the trapper's ed, like what's step number one to start getting out on the trap line?
For me too, it was surround yourself with the best, you know, reach out to guys, you know, I mean, you may not know who they are, but if you do research, you'll find out who some of the best guys out there are, and just surround yourself with the best guys, you know, ask questions and they'll teach you. Most of them will teach you as long as they're not in your state, you know,
or not in your neighborhood at least.
Yeah,
right?
not where you're trapping.
And, you know, if you had to give, you know, an actual trap line tip, let's just say it's somebody that's in North Dakota, to make it easy, what would you give that new trapper as like a piece of advice, like an actual piece of advice for doing something out on the line, aside from bedding your traps perfectly?
Yeah. Study the land and the animals around it, you know, see if you can figure out where they're at, where they're going, you know, where they're eating at. Because you can set traps all day long, but if there ain't animal around there, you're not going to catch them. So you got to know where they're at.
And, you know, you mentioned hunting too, like how you went from, being exposed to trapping to spending a good chunk of time hunting and then going back to trapping. One of the questions I like to ask is, has your focus on trapping the past several years made you a better hunter? And if so, why?
I would say it has, but I haven't been hunting in a while because I've got so many things going on. I'll work with an organization here and take some guys in wheelchairs bow hunting, but most of the time I'm not even hunting right now because I don't have time. But it does allow you to learn the lay of the land when you're out trapping. You'll actually see tracks, where the moose are at, where the deer are at, where the turkeys, pretty much everything, where everything's at. You get to see that while you're out on a line. So,
yeah, you get a little bit of a different ability to be in tune. But I can't let this go. You just said that you help out with an association that takes, gentlemen and women maybe in wheelchairs out bow hunting. Complete tangent, but I'd love to hear about that and throw a shout out and put a link out there for whatever organization's putting that on.
There's an organization up here that I'm associated with called Prairie Grit. And we do, like at our wildlife club, we'll have a day of, they can come out and shoot bows, or, we have a gun day where they can all come out, sight their rifles and, shoot and stuff like that. And there's a guy that I would be hunting with the last couple of years. I haven't had a chance to get out with him this year, but we'd go out to the blind and, sit there all day and kind of chat a little bit and wait for a buck to come in. It's just a way to help out. It's a company I donate to. Part of my business is I donate $1 from everything I sell each month to an organization. I do one with Kentucky Wounded Heroes. I don't know if you heard of them. They take out wounded heroes, first responders. They just came back from like an Alaska fishing trip. I work with them, donate anyway with them. I donate to Prairie Grid up here, and I'll work with those guys. I'm trying to think of my other ones. I've got, who's the third one? Oh, Walking Humbly, it's called. They're down in Kentucky, and they take out first responder kids and stuff, that maybe their parents had passed away as a first responder or military or police or whatever. And they take them out hunting. So there's a few organizations. I wanted to be able to give back, and I want to give back to something that I love, which is outdoors. So, I pick 3 organizations, and like every month I rotate who I donate to, because if I was in their position, I would love that.
Well, that's pretty flipping awesome. So anybody listening, $1 of whatever purchase you make through Trapline beard oil is going to be going to one of those 3 organizations, depending on the month you hit. But
it's $1 from each thing I sell too. It's not like just from if somebody comes and spends $100, it's not just $1. It's $1 from every single product that they buy.
Well, that's pretty awesome. I mean, what I'll do as well is in the show notes for people listening, aside from Bryan's website, I'll also put the website for those 3 organizations. So, whether you do it through Bryan and buy some of his products, or if you just want to go in and donate or investigate what they're doing, you should go check that out. That's awesome. That's a beautiful tangent. But, you talked to at the very beginning, like your whole sojourn back into trapping was because you were afraid of where it was going. So I'm going to ask you to kind of look into your crystal ball right now and tell me where you see the future of trapping as we stand right now.
I see it gone. Maybe my generation's gone. I'm 54. If we don't keep fighting for it, because the people that are causing so much trouble, they're the loudest. There might not be that as many people, but they're the loudest, and they're getting the most noise. The noise is causing enough to get attention. And the way our governments are going, they're kind of like leaning that way. And I'm afraid that eventually, it may not be in the next 20 years. It could be a little longer, but I see it kind of going away in almost every state. I mean, if you follow like the stuff that goes on in Colorado or even Montana right now and stuff, it's just like, it's going to disappear.
Yeah, it was, I was down in Colorado at the Colorado Outdoorsman Day doing a trapping demo, for Dan Gates and that whole crew, trying to muster up, exposure around what's happening in the mountain lion and bobcat ban. And, you look at what happened in New Mexico with the public land trapping ban, California, Washington, everything's, the dominoes are falling if we don't, as cheesy as it sounds, band together and put our best foot forward and show it. And, your sentiment is not one that is uncommon when I ask this question of, I think we're at a really key inflection point. I think that's why it's important to have, companies that are doing great things, not just making great products like yourself, but also donating and showing like the thing that you wish you could show everybody that trappers really are. They're really selfless. They might not have a dollar to their name, but they're going to give you the shirt off their back kind of people. And that's who you meet and who you run into. But not all those guys have social media.
Right.
And as unfortunate as it is, that's the medium of exposure of what we do. And, I think just the ability to somehow cast that out of, we're not bad people.
Yeah. Well, luckily I was out working at the high school the other day with those coyotes. I was moving them around, and their biology teacher rode his bicycle out where I was out, and he actually started a conversation with me about trapping because he saw my shirt with trapping on it, and I told him what I was doing out there. He asked me to come in and talk to his high school class, bring in traps, and bring in fur and explain stuff, which is huge. I mean, it's going to touch everybody in this high school that, that class. They're going to get to see what trapping's really about. And, because I read somewhere, and I don't remember where it was, about they asked somebody to draw a trap, and every person that drew it had the spikes. Yeah. And I don't remember where I read that the other day, but I was reading that, and I'm like, but I can show them, I can actually stick my hand in a foothold, and show them get snapped on there, that it's not going to kill somebody, and we just had a lady that was throwing a fit because somebody's cat was loose and got in a trap here in town. It was a foothold trap. So I don't know why anybody had a foothold trap in town, but somebody did. And she goes, that cat's legs are going to be broken. I said, no, they're probably not going to be broken. I said, it'll probably be sore, it'll probably be bruised up. And I guess its toes were like dislocated. So, I mean, it wasn't broken. They were able to fix it real quick. I mean, should it happen? No, but it does.
Yeah. And I think that misconception, it's so hard to overcome it. Like even before I got into trapping as an adult, I had that same, cartoon caricature of a trap in my head. It's just what you think is what we grew up with if you weren't exposed to trapping specifically. But what you're going to be doing, and I think what a lot of people are doing is, even if it's 13 kids in one class, that's 13 kids that can walk away from there and be like, oh no, like trapping is, it's a means of control, right? It's a control operation where you can leg capture an animal. And when you take the appropriate measures with swivels, springs, everything else in modern traps, that those animals, if it's a non-target catch, can be released unharmed. And I think that's a great thing that you're doing there, as far as kind of reaching out and getting with the youth. So
I'm looking forward to it. He hasn't called me yet, but we just discussed it like a week ago. So
well, we'll have to do a follow-up once you go and talk and figure out what the response is from I don't even know what generation we're on. I don't know if it's Gen Z or Gen whatever, but
I have no idea.
It'll be interesting. I'm sure it'll be wild to see these kids who grew up with smartphones. Like I grew up in the 80s and early 90s, pre-cell phone, pre-internet. That didn't start hitting me till way later in life, but now these kids are born with it, in hand.
Yeah.
And, largely having everything provided for them at the grocery store. And I'll be wildly interested to see what these kids' reactions are to you explaining modern day trapping.
Yeah, I want to kind of see what they think a trap looks like too. I'm going to have them draw that too, just to see how many have it with them big claws on them and spikes on them or whatever.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. So, lightning round. I always like to end these interviews with 2 questions. So, first one. What is the wildest experience you've ever had in the woods, whether it be hunting, trapping, or just out gallivanting?
Well, I can't say it's wild, but it's something that's hilarious, and it stuck into my head forever. I was probably a teenager, and my dad and I were out pheasant hunting in Michigan. We're walking along a corn row, and I'm on the inside. My dad's on the outside, and we jumped a rooster pheasant. Or our dogs did. And my dad swung and he told me to shoot. I dropped to the ground. I thought he was going to shoot me. He swung his gun toward me, but I was like, I'm diving.
So he got away then, huh?
Yeah, it did. He couldn't stop laughing. So
That's pretty funny. So yeah, dad almost Dick Cheney'd you in your mind, and
Yeah, that's what I thought was going to happen. So I just dove.
that's pretty funny. Hey, at least you had a good reaction. You know, in those moments, you're always curious how you'd react, and at least you know to duck out of the friendly fire zone for sure.
He laughed so hard.
And then I always like to end on a hypothetical.
Yeah.
So you have to make a choice, Bryan Watson.
Okay.
Would you rather get an unlimited trapping season just for you every year, but you have to shave your beard, or you give up trapping altogether for the rest of your life, but you get your beard oil company acquired for $5 million?
That's a tough one.
They're never easy.
Well, the beard can grow back.
Yeah, it's true.
But the $5 million, that's a lot of money.
That is not an insignificant amount of money.
That's life-changing.
Yeah.
I would probably have to take the money.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. You can still hunt. So there's that. You
I
just
can still be outside.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of money to do that.
Exactly.
I can go hunting everywhere.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Bryan, first and foremost, thank you. I know we've been trying to get this going on. I've learned a lot, and I'm excited to see where you take all the different ventures. But where can people find out more about Trapline Beard Company, yourself, or anything else you want to plug as it relates to the foundations that you donate to, or anything else you're involved in?
Yeah, just go out to my website, www.traplinebeardoil.com. And actually, as you scroll down through there, you'll see the 3 companies that I've got on there, and you can click right on their link and take you right to their website so you can see what they're all about. That's pretty much, I just want to get that name out there and let people see it, let people try my stuff.
Well, cool. Well, it's been a true honor and a pleasure, Bryan. I appreciate it. And for everybody else, stay tuned for another episode of the Okayest Trapper podcast.